Welcome to the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report, the only show that provides you with the best insight and information to everything Franklin County sports. And now here's your host, Bobby C.
Hello and welcome to the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. I'm Bobby C. I want to welcome you to our first show of 2020. That's right, folks. The new year is here. Winter sports is off and running. Our holiday schedule was so annoying this year that it really did put a damper on a lot of our information that we were able to share with everyone. And I want to apologize that we haven't been on for a couple of weeks. But I want to say thank you to John Meisner and Philippe Simone for the wonderful job that they have done with this show. Two producers that have dedicated their time, their efforts. Thank you to Johnny and Philippe on putting together our Best of 2019 show. It just is really wonderful to know that you have a couple of guys who can rely on each and every week here on the show, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart. I also want to say a big thank you to Chris Collins in the FCAT, to Deidre and Dean over at Montague Community Television, to Otis Wheeler and the staff over at Berniston Northfield Community Television for being able to carry our show each and every week. GCTV has been a very special part of what I do every week in my life, and I just want to say that it's wonderful to be able to have a crew that you can count on, and boy, this has been a wonderful journey, and now we kick off a brand new year. What I want to do is I want to run down what happened in the month of December for these sports teams. We have about a 45-minute show that we want to share with you to go over all of what is going on. And the best part about it is that it really works out perfect for us because all these sports teams are going to be kicking off their full schedule of being consistent on playing each and every week starting this week. So it works out really well for us. So let's get the party started. All right. Well, it turned out to be a big day for the Greenfield High School basketball team, and this was back on the 20th of December. And they ended up hosting an independent game that they ended up having against Palmer High School. And they picked up that victory 56-48. Now, Palmer basketball is very good, and Angelo Thomas knew that, and that's why he ended up having this independent game against a really good quality basketball program. And a guy by the name of Henry Zwart ended up being the guy that came to the rescue in the fourth quarter for this team to give Greenfield this victory. You know, if you talk to Angelo Thomas, he doesn't really like to give a lot of kudos unless you earn them. That's the one thing we know about him. He is, truthfully, one of those guys. And the other thing about him, too, that I have to give a lot of credit to is the fact that he is going to make these kids better players. He really is. And as a coach, he was wonderful when he was down at Hopkins. And now here at Greenfield, with this new group of guys that he's got this year, he really has them looking good. So it turned out to be a big win for them. Congratulations. You know, entering that fourth quarter of that game against Palmer, Greenfield was only up 39-38. But Zwart did a nice job on the defensive end. His other guys that have been able to score for him were very well and very focused. And like I said, they ended up with 56 points total. So really picking up that 17 points that they ended up scoring in that fourth quarter turned out to be the difference. And the defense was the big thing as well. Mason Meadows, their big guy, ended up with 21 points. A nice freshman in Maverick Ward, he ended up with 15 points. Ryan Cody scored 5. He also pulled down 9 rebounds in the victory. Greenfield kicked off their 2019-2020 season with a big win over Palmer on December 20th. Frontier picked up an easy 21-point victory over East Hampton. That was also on December 20th. The Eagles had no answer for Peter Carey. This guy's 6'10". Let me say that again here, folks. 6'10". Whoo! Talk about a monster. Oh, yes, that's exactly what Peter is. And he had a monster of a game as well. 24 points, 17 rebounds. Huge win for Frontier over East Hampton. You know, when you talk to Coach Ben Barshevsky, he'll tell you straight up, his team did everything they needed to do, and they did it right because they scored points and they played great defense, only letting up 38 points. Your chance in high school basketball, if you can be able to hold a team under 40, you have a great chance to become the winning team. Also, Sean Richter ended up with 10 points for Frontier. Brett Robinson knocked down 3 threes. He ended up with 9 in the victory over East Hampton. Well, where they really took it to Pioneer, that was also on December 20th. Final score was 59-43. You know, it was a tough day over there at Messer Gymnasium for the Panthers. They really couldn't get things together, and they ended up getting beaten this one pretty big. You know, they were only down by 11 at halftime, but all of a sudden, Ware just sort of opened things up a little bit more in that second half. Pioneer could not do much, but they ended up losing in this one. Ryan Potter ended up with 15 points. You know, he ended up with 5 3-pointers in that game. Jared Hubbard also had 13 points. So those were your 2 top scorers for Pioneer in this one as they ended up getting beat. The big thing that really hurt them was their fourth quarter in that game against Ware, where they only scored 2 points. Well, the Renaissance School ended up beating Turner's Falls. That was also on December 20th. Final score was 77-67. Can tell you this, though. Turner's was down by 20 at halftime. They were able to cut into that lead, and they cut into it by being able to make up 10, but it's pretty tough when you're down by 20. The team finally ran out of gas in this one, and they ended up getting beat. The Thunder were led by Marcus Sanders with 17 points. He also had 8 rebounds, and he dished out 6 assists. Anthony Peterson, he had a double-double as well with 16 points and 10 rebounds. Jaden Whiting ended up with 15 points. Chase Novak ended up in double figures with 13. Very good distribution for this Thunder team. Unfortunately, they took on a very good Renaissance basketball program. Well, folks, I am not used to saying this, but this is what happened on December 20th. Hoosick Valley, the team that ended up beating Greenfield High School last year in girls basketball, well, Greenfield ended up joining their big tournament, and the final score in this one was Hoosick Valley 71, Greenfield 30. I cannot believe that I just said this, folks, that Hoosick Valley ended up beating Greenfield by 41 points on December the 20th. That's right, this Hurricanes team is legit. They have been a solid program for many, many years, and they continue their dominance, and they ended up dominating in that game against Greenfield. It was the holiday tournament that they played up at Hoosick Valley. Katie Hazelton led the way with 16 points for the Wave. They trailed throughout. Matter of fact, the final score at halftime was 50-15. Greenfield only scored 15 points in the first half, and they only scored 15 points in the second half. Christina Reed and Raquel Provost each had 4 for Greenfield in the loss. Well, the Franklin County Tech School girls, they picked up a victory. They ended up beating the Commerce School. Final score was 48-16 back on December 20th. I can tell you it turned out to be a nice day for Isabel Duga and Jocelyn Crowningshield as they both scored double figures, and the defense was stellar in this one. Of course, when you can hold a team to 16 points, things look good, and that's exactly what happened in this one as the Tech School walked away with an easy 32-point win. Duga ended up with 13 points. Crowningshield had 12. Desiree Doan ended up having 8 points for the Franklin County Tech School, 6 points by Jemmy Cruz. Well, Lee had no problem with the Pioneer girls. That was also on December 20th. Final score in this one was 61-35. Coach Mike Churchill, first-year coach for Pioneer, said that the team went out there with some energy, but they took on a team that was dominating, and that's exactly what happened in this one. Final score, just after the first 8 minutes of the game in the first quarter, was 25-5. But the final score was 61-35. I can tell you that Paige Loftman, that is their top player. She ended up with 18 points. She also ended up having 8 field goals, so really a solid day for her. And Steph Scoble ended up with 8 points in the loss for Pioneer. Also on the 20th, there was a wrestling match between Mohawk Trail and Granby, and Mohawk ended up winning this one 46-18. Want to welcome you to the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. I'm Bobby C. So glad you're with us. It is our first show of 2020, and I want to thank everyone here at Greenfield Community Television, the FCAT, also Montague Community Television, and the Berniston Northfield Community Television up there in the upper part of Franklin County. Want to say thank you to our wonderful sponsors that have been wonderful to us. Want to thank Denny's Pantry on Berniston Road in Greenfield. Also, the 4-Leaf Clover Restaurant on Routes 5 and 10 in Berniston, and by Lisa Alber of Alber Hearing Services, 33 Riddell Street in Greenfield. So thank you to our wonderful underwriters who have been able to help out our cause. Well, it turned out to be a big day over there in good old Greenfield as an awesome game happened between Greenfield and Drury. That game was a great hockey game over at the Collins Mullen Arena. That was over there on December the 22nd. And a kid by the name of Brian Bauman, one of the best players in all of Western Mass, he buried the game winner, and Greenfield edged Drury in this one. Final score was 2-1. You know, if you talk to their head coach, Adam Bouchard, he'll tell you that this team is very well disciplined. And I'll tell you, you look back and you see who these players are that are on this team this year, they have the weapons. And the best part about it is that now that Greenfield is a co-op program of all the schools here in Franklin County, we are getting the kids that are out of the Franklin County Hockey Association. Now, these are all the kids that have been able to grow up playing hockey together. They now get to be able to do that on the high school level, as Greenfield is the only hockey program that we have here in our area. And they're taking on the big dogs too. And coming up with that win over Drury turned out to be a nice one for the Green Wave. Brian Bauman's game winner was assisted by Aiden Roach. It was with 39 seconds left in regulation. Boy, that came up at a big time for Brian Bauman. So it turned out to be a very successful day for him, as he ended up with 2 goals on the day. Both of those goals ended up being valuable, and Brian Bauman and the Green Wave pick up the win over Drury. Well, on the 22nd of December, it was another game for Greenfield High School girls basketball as they took on another powerhouse team here in the area, a team that they ended up beating in the Western Mass Championship last year, and that is the South Hadley Tigers. And unfortunately, the Green Wave got beat in this one at the buzzer. A buzzer beater. They got beat 51-50 against South Hadley. That was up there at Hoosick Valley Regional in that holiday tournament. They ended up playing that extra game against the South Hadley Tigers, and they came up short. Katie Hazelton, though, she is the star of Greenfield. She ended up with 24 points. Christina Reed and Brianna Rivera each ended up with 8 points in the loss for the Green Wave. Well, the Frontier Wrestling team, we're going to hear about them a lot this year. Why? Because they are one of the top wrestling programs in this area. And they ended up with a dominating win. They ended up knocking off their teams that they took on in a tournament at Longmeadow High School. It was the early bird tournament, and Tanner Finch ended up capturing the individual title at the 145-pound class. He did well. Also in there, a guy that we're going to mention a lot this year is Ito McMillan. Well, he ended up placing second in the 152-pound class. Casey Matson, another kid we're going to mention a lot, he ended up 4th place at 182. Also, the tech school was in a special tournament that they ended up getting involved in. It was called the Big Red Tournament, and they had a couple of guys who did well. I can tell you that Peter Saladino and Josh Burnell, they ended up wrestling their way to 4th place finishes for the tech school in that tournament. Noah Fuse ended up with 2 wins in the 160-pound weight class. Also, Kyle Burnell and Will Rosenberg picked up wins for the Eagles. I will tell you, though, Kyle Burnell, one of their best wrestlers, has been injured, and he's been battling that. So we're going to have to see where he ends up faring this year for the Franklin County Tech Eagles. Well, on the 23rd of December, that means that it's our final sports day before the Christmas holiday. Sarah Johnson ended up drilling a go-ahead three-pointer in the fourth quarter. Pioneer girls end up picking up a win as they beat Southwick. Final score was 38-34. Holding a team to 34 points. Remember, like I said, under 40, you have a chance to win. And yes, the girls from up there in good old Pioneer end up winning. You know, you talk to Coach Churchill, of course, he's excited because that is his first victory as a varsity basketball coach. Yes, Coach, I got to tell you, the guy was a referee for a long, long time, and this year he ended up taking on the role as the new head basketball coach at Pioneer, and he picked up win number 1. They were trailing going into the fourth quarter by 1 point, but they came back, they outscored Southwick, and they picked up the victory. I got to tell you, though, you talked about a girl who can play ball for them. Paige Loftman, well, she ended up pacing the offense with 13 points. Steph Scoville, she did everything she needed to do. She ended up with 10 points and 8 rebounds. She also had 6 steals. Solid game for her. Johnson ended up with 7 points, and Alina Sesajanin ended up with 6 for Pioneer. Congratulations, girls, on their first victory. Nice to be able to get that right before Christmas on December 23rd. Well, Smith Academy, they took on Mohawk girls. That game was down at Webb Gymnasium, and I can tell you that it was a solid performance for Smith Academy. They end up with the 21-point victory. But Grace Poplowski, what a great day she had. She ended up with 22 points out of the 30 for Mohawk Trail Regional. Also, Stella Clark ended up with 6, Maya LaSure with 2. The Warriors are off to a very tough start this year, but they have a very young program. Matter of fact, most of their players on this team, freshmen, 8th graders. Yeah. Coach Harrison's got a lot of work to do, but the good thing is this is what you need to do to build your program. Give the girls as much playing time as possible. Keep teaching, and hopefully the result will turn out to be much better up there in Buckland. Hey, it might not be the greatest of years for them, but it is a positive thing when you have a lot of young players that are going to be able to get better. Well, Ware High School, those girls are very good, and they ended up knocking off the Turners Falls Thunder. Final score was 57-36. You know, I got to tell you, though, those Ware Indians are very solid, and they ended up beating the Thunder in this one. 8th grader for Turners, another situation of a program that is very young. 8th grader Taylor Green, she ended up with 15 points for the Thunder. She knocked down 3 threes, and I got to tell you, she is one of the powerhouse scorers for this team. You know, you think about that program right now, the Thunder. Let's talk about them for just a second. They have a 7th grader. They have 2 8th graders. They have 3 9th graders. They also have 4 seniors, but the 4 seniors, their main sports are not basketball. They are other sports. You think about Haley Bogus, great softball player, very good volleyball player. Dabney Rollins, excellent, and I mean this, an excellent volleyball player and an excellent track and field. You look at Lindsay Whiteman. She plays very good volleyball. She also does play on the softball team. You look at also the younger generation of kids that are coming up. A lot of them all play AAU, like Steph Peterson and Kendra Campbell and Taylor Green and Maddie Lamatanian. These girls are all going to get better, and Coach Marv is very lucky to be able to have this great group of young girls that are playing a lot of extra basketball, and being so young, the future could be very bright for Turner's Thunder basketball. Well, in boys basketball, it was a nice win for the Green Wave, picking up another victory on the season as they knocked off East Hampton 71-54. You know, you really talked to Coach Angelo Thomas, wasn't really that impressed with the way that his team played in this one. He felt that his team could play even better. Just remember that. Even though you pick up a victory of 17 points, you know what? As a coach, sometimes you know that there's other things that you can do to make your team better. The one stat that he did like, though, is the offensive performance, 71 points. That is pretty good. He said the game plan was to get it down low to the big man, and that's exactly what they did. Hey, when you got a guy as big as Mason Meadows, why not take advantage? He ended up with 27 points to help them in the victory. You know, a couple of other guys who have really stepped it up include Henry Zwart, ended up with 13. Kenny Adams had 9 points. Julius Brewington with 7. And also David Carey ended up with 6. Offense was not a problem in this one for the Green Wave. I guess what Coach is probably saying, I want to try to keep these teams under 50. And you know what? That's not a bad goal to be able to have if you have a big, explosive offensive program. You know, I always tell everybody that the biggest problem with a lot of these teams that score a lot of offense, they don't have a lot of extra energy to be able to play a lot of defense, too. Because if you're exerting a lot of your energy on putting it on the offensive end, sometimes you can get a little lazy on getting back on the defensive end, and you're giving up easy points. But the Green Wave picked up a nice victory. Congratulations goes out to them. Well, Palmer ended up beating Frontier. We've been talking about Greenfield and Pioneer, Greenfield and Frontier, that is, as two teams that are premier here in our area. Well, we know that Greenfield ended up beating this Palmer team, but Palmer took it to Frontier. That was back on December 23rd. Final score was 56-47. Red Hawks did keep it close, but at Goodnoe Gymnasium, they weren't able to hold on, and they ended up losing in this one. And they didn't lose by a lot. They only lost by 9. Sean Richter led the way with 13 points. Also, Peter Carey ended up with 8 points in the loss. Well, I can tell you right now, when you're 6'10", 8 points is not going to do it if your team wants to pick up a victory. Well, in swimming, turned out to be a nice solid day for the Turners Falls swimming team. And I got to tell you right now, this girls program is very good. They end up winning in this one 67-11. They have a very solid swimming program over there with a lot of great athletes. And I can tell you right now that Hannah Marhefka ended up first place in the 50-yard freestyle. She had a time of 37.57 seconds in picking up the 50-yard freestyle. Also, Jade Tyler, she ended up being just 0.9 seconds away from qualifying for the sectional championship in the butterfly. She still has many more chances. Don't worry about that. Her time was 1 minute, 9 seconds, 0.90. So she just was a little short of making that. First place in the 100 backstroke ended up going to Allison Wheeler. She had a time of 1 minute, 23 seconds. Also, Olivia Whittier was the top finisher in the 100 breaststroke with a time of 1:19. So I can tell you that Whittier, also Tyler, they ended up doing well because they had the 200 medley and they ended up winning first place in that as well. The boys' side, they took a tough loss. It was a tough one. They ended up losing 38-36. Nick Martin placed first in the 200 individual medley. Also, the 100 freestyle, Cam Bradley ended up earning 2 first-place finishes in the 50 free and the 100 backstroke. Well, on December 23rd, it turned out to be a very solid second half for Greenfield as they took on a very good Hopkins Academy team. Remember, last year, Hopkins Academy ended up going to the state championship. Of course, they took on one of the best teams in the whole state, believe it or not, in girls basketball, and they ended up really having a hard time in this one, and they got beat by 40 in the championship against one of the premier teams down in Boston. But it turned out to be a nice win for the Wave, one they needed, especially after getting a tough loss against that Hoosick team, losing by 41, and also that buzzer beater against South Hadley. Well, the Wave ends up picking up the victory in this one, and it was a solid win. They won 52-29. And boy, if you talk to Coach Hickey, he'll tell you his team came to play in this one. So now the Green Wave is sitting at a situation where they are looking pretty good in their division. But those 2 independent losses definitely hurt for them with the loss against Hoosick and South Hadley. can tell you right now, Katie Hazelton continued her winning ways, and that's exactly what she is. She is truly a winner and ends up with 20 points in this one. Also, I can tell you that Coach Hickey is very high on Katie Hazelton. He says, quote, "She's unbelievable. She doesn't quit. She rebounds, she steals, she scores, she handles the ball. She is a true basketball player." Brianna Rivera ended up joining Hazelton in double figures. She ended up with 11. Raquel Provost with 7 points. Tess Rancourt ended up with 3 points, and she pulled down 7 rebounds for the Green Wave in the win. Well, back on December 23rd, it turned out to be a special day for a kid by the name of Ty Sadowski, and he ended up helping his Franklin County team as the tech school knocked off Athol. Nice job right there for them picking up the win. You know, Sadowski's only a young one. They end up winning in this one 64-57. You know, Ty's dad was a very good basketball player too, who came out of Franklin County Tech as well. And it's funny because when you talk to him, he'll tell you, quote, "My dad really pushed me as a kid. Ball handling, dribbling, passing. It's really helped me. That's how I got to the level I'm at today." Yes, that's right, folks. Kid's only a freshman. Ended up with 20 in the win over Athol. Also in this one, I can tell you that Bailey Young ended up having a solid performance as well. How about this? 22 points for Bailey. He is on fire right now, scoring for the Tech Eagles. Garrett Cole ended up with 11 points. He grabbed 15 rebounds in the victory. Well, on the 23rd, there was some wrestling going on. Frontier shined over at the Tech Eagle Holiday Classic. And I can tell you right now that 2 Frontier wrestlers, they were crowned champions in this one. And they are 2 guys that we are going to mention a lot this year. And that is Tanner Finch and Ito McMillan. Both of those guys ended up winning in their weight class. Finch ended up winning in the 145-pound class. Also, McMillan, he ended up winning easily in the 152 weight class. So nice job done by them. You know, when you start talking to these guys about what their goals are just to be able to do as well as they can. And you know, I like the fact that wrestling is a team sport, but it's also about accountability. Because when you're representing a weight class for your wrestling team, you are playing as an individual. So the nice thing is whatever you do as an individual, it turns off to be points for your team. So everybody's got to come in with a mindset that they have to do their job on their weight class that they are going to take on to be able to help their team in the long run. Well, their head coach was the wrestling coach for years, took a couple of years off and came back this year. Don Gordon, who's also the head football coach over at Frontier, he came back as the wrestling coach this year. And Ito McMillan said, quote, "He is awesome. He has taught us a lot. He is a very soft-spoken coach, but he has a lot of knowledge about wrestling. He has really helped what we're trying to do this year. And it's showing right now because McMillan and Finch are both undefeated on the season." So really great job by those guys. Well, we made it through Christmas. Now we're sliding to December 26th. But I want to welcome you to the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. I'm Bobby C. We're so glad you made it here today. It is our first show of 2020. Yes, 2020 is here. I want to say a big thank you. We have wonderful underwriters. We have the Four Leaf Clover Restaurant in Berniston, Denny's Pantry, Berniston Road in Greenfield, and Lisa Albert of Albert Hearing Services, 33 Riddell Street in Greenfield. Also, Philippe Simone, John Meisner, our special producers here today as well. Well, let's get to it. Day after Christmas, Franklin County Tech girls basketball. They are on cruise control. And you know how they spelled the cruise? C-R-U-Z. We're talking about Jemmy Cruz. That's right, Jemmy Cruz ended up having a solid game in their win over the Hampton Charter School. Final score was 41-30. Turned out to be a nice win, and with that victory on December 26th, The Tech girls basketball program is now 3-1 on the season. And Coach Joe Gamache is the new basketball coach this year. He's also the athletic director. You know, that guy was involved with the wrestling program forever over at the school. He ended up taking over for Sean Knightley, who did a wonderful job as the basketball coach over there at the Tech school. And hey, Coach Joe and his ladies are off to a very good start. Let's talk about Jemmy Cruz. You know, you talk to Coach, he'll tell you straight up. She was all over the court. She's putting in the work. But you know what she said? She wants to build energy. She says, you know what? Sometimes you start getting a little lazy and you lose the energy. She said, quote, you know what? The energy level starts to drop. Someone has to step up. Usually the energy of the team is what helps you get over the top. Well, she is absolutely right. She says that I'm out there, I'm hustling, I'm doing whatever I can to help my team. Well, guess what? She did that, and they picked up the victory. Jordan Herbert, well, she ended up remaining her strong presence in the paint, ended up with not only her 10 points, but we like this stat a lot for someone down low. 13 rebounds. That is a very important stat. How about the 4 assists, too? Nice solid day right there for Jordan. And a nice win. Jemmy Cruz and her team end up picking up the victory. 3-1 are the Tech girls right now in basketball. Well, on the 26th, it was a hockey game that was just totally dominated by the Green Wave. They picked up a 9-2 victory over Ludlow. The Wave, they ended up finding the net often, baby, and that's exactly what they did. And you know, when you talk to Coach Adam Broussard, he'll tell you that he likes what this team is about. He also was glad about the return of one of his captains in Mike McGoldrick. Mike McGoldrick ended up with 2 goals and an assist coming from his injury. He also does a nice job at forechecking as well, and that is a very important thing to Coach Adam Bouchard. He likes and takes pride in forechecking. Well, you know what it does? It keeps guys away from the net. And that's exactly what happened in this one as the Wave picked up the 9-2 victory. Brian Bauman, this guy's just been unbelievable for his team as well. Bauman distributed effectively. How about 4 assists for him? I mean, this team is just playing on fire right now. Congratulations goes out to Greenfield. Let's talk about the scoring in this one. Wow, this is just so impressive. Sean O'Sullivan, 2 goals. Aiden Roach with 2 assists. Jacob Bryant with an assist. Kyle Barnes and Robert Harris, better known as Boo. That's right. His name is Boo Harris. Boo! Love that name. We'll be talking about Boo. He had an assist as well in this one as the Wave picked up a big win. Well, on the 27th of December, we slide back in to some basketball, and it was a game that I had a chance to be a part of. It was up there at Pioneer in a very cold gymnasium. That's right. The boiler went out up there at Mess Gymnasium. You know the old saying, they call it the mess hall? Well, guess what? The mess hall had no heat. Well, they did, but his name was Troy Emond. He was the guy with the heater. How about 28 points for him in the victory as Pioneer picked up the win over the Thunder, 65-51. That's right, someone's got to be hot, baby, and it was Troy Emond. This kid was sitting in the shadows of Garrett Cody because of the great career that he had up at Pioneer. Well, now it's Emond's turn, and he had a solid performance against the Thunder. Got to tell you, though, got to give credit where credit's due. There was a lot of good things that happened in this one, and there were things that weren't so good either. If you really think about what the percentage of shots were in this one, it was pretty ugly. Oh, yeah, the shooting percentage in this one was easily under 25%. So think about this. You throw up 4 shots, you make only 1. It's pretty ugly, and it was what it was. There was a lot of shots in this one. You think about the score, though, and you say to yourself, wow, 65-51? It's not bad. Problem was, folks, there was a lot of running and gunning. What do we call that? We call that street ball. And you know what? Coaches don't like street ball. Street ball basketball can get your team in a lot of trouble. And you know what? In this one, the Thunder definitely came up short. Let's talk about some of the stats in this one. Jaden Fox ended up with 14, Jared Hubbard with 10. They were the guys that were in double figures for Pioneer. But check this out. This isn't bad at all. This is what we call some distribution in this one for Turners. Chase Novak ended up with 16. Marcus Sanders with 13. Anthony Peterson with 10. Also, Jaden Whiting with 6. They're still getting guys that can be able to distribute and score for Turners. The problem is the defense. Yeah, when you give up 65 points, that's not enough. That's desperately a problem as far as I'm concerned, especially when you're only putting up 51. And there you go. Tough loss for the Thunder up there at the mess hall with no heat back last week. Well, the Greenfield boys continue their winning ways. Easy win over Smith Academy, 60-31. Let's talk about this one. It was just wire-to-wire dominance for the Green Wave. Energy was good for a vacation game, says Angelo Thomas. You know what that means, don't you? It means that during vacation week, the kids are out running around with their friends. They have a different schedule of when they go to bed. They are eating a lot of food that they really don't eat during the year, a lot of junk food from the holidays. But Coach said, hey, this is good. All right. We ended up doing well. We ended up holding a team under 40 points. That's huge. And you know what? I totally get it. And what I like about the fact is that he said it's about the defensive end. He's not worried about offense. He's worried about defense. And that's exactly what the problem is. So, very solid performance right there by Greenfield as they picked up the win. Let's talk about some of the big stats in this one. Mason Meadows, the big guy, 17 points. Henry Zwart, he ended up with 6 assists in this one. David Carey, awesome job on the defensive end. He ended up with 6 steals. I like when you throw stats like that in here. This is great. It means that everybody's distributing and doing their job in different ways. Frontier picked up an easy victory over Mohawk, and boy, this was a dominating performance. 77-30. Frontier picks up the win. The Redhawks had everything going their way. Matter of fact, Brett Robinson ended up with 4 threes. Aiden Hernandez ended up pouring 3. Also, a nice day of raining threes for Frontier. Let's talk about some of the other guys who were able to get things done. Matter of fact, Robinson and Carey ended up with 13 apiece. Anthony Moffitt ended up being the leading scorer for Mohawk in the loss. He ended up with 15 points. Well, the Franklin County Tech boys, they picked up a victory just after Christmas. Final score was 55-43. Nice win for them. Bailey Young continues his offensive performance. Oh, my God, that kid is performing. How about 22 points? We having a little problem with the mic here, guys? Okay, is this better? Okay. Sorry, guys. See, this is why I have the crew I have. It's awesome. Bailey ended up with 22 points. Garrett Cole ended up with 14 and 9 rebounds and 2 blocks for the Tech School. Girls basketball. It was a tough loss for the Green Wave. They end up getting beat by Chicopee Comp. Final score was 41-31. There you go, folks. The Greenfield girls are now under 500 for the first time in a very long time, as the Wave did struggle on the offensive end in their independent game against the Colts. Brianna Rivera, she ended up with 9 points for the Wave. Raquel Provost ended up with 6 rebounds, but as you know, Katie Hazelton always leads the way for them. She ended up with 14 points, 16 rebounds, and 5 steals. She was everywhere for this team. Also, Ludlow picking up an easy win over Turners Falls. Talk about a difference in division. When you sit there and you think about Ludlow and Turners Falls, well, after the first quarter, it was okay. It was 10-10, but that's when Ludlow took over. I can tell you that freshman Steph Peterson, she had a strong game with 6 points, pulling down 11 rebounds. 8th grader Lily Spira, she led the Thunder with 7 points. Fellow classmate, you got it here, folks, 8th grader Taylor Green, 4 points. Ed Marvel is very happy with his young team. They are displaying some very good things And it's nice to see these young ladies do the job they've been doing. Well, the wrestling team over at good old Franklin County Tech, well, they were in a tournament. It was a holiday tournament on Friday, and they ended up having a couple of guys who did well in this one, including Josh Burnell, who ended up doing well. He ended up placing second in the 132-pound class. Burnell picked up 3 pins in this one, so a nice job by him. Will Rosenberg ended up 6th place in the 106-pound weight class as well. Franklin County Tech ended up placing 16th out of the 21 teams in that tournament. Well, back on the 29th, as you could tell, folks, we're winding down our show. There was one more game that was played here in 2019, and that was the game of hockey, where the Green Wave picked up yet another victory as they end up winning in this one against Southwick. Final score was 3-1. Got to tell you, Brian Bauman, whoo, that guy is on fire. Brian Bauman is on fire. So I want you to know that he ended up having a solid performance. You know, after literally scoring 27 goals last year, this kid has a chance to be able to beat that this season. Bauman is a huge part of this program. He works harder than anyone, according to Coach Bouchard, and boy, is it showing right now. There's 4 captains on this team that are getting it done, and it's not just about Brian Bauman. It's also about their goalie, Riley Drew. Also, Mike McGoldrick and Sean O'Sullivan, they all have played key roles in this team. Riley Drew, well, he ended up with, he had 12 saves. Nice, easy day for him in the net. But right now, they are on fire. Another guy who's been able to step it up, and a huge congratulations goes out to a kid that I used to coach in Little League, and what a nice boy he is too, but he's always loved hockey, and that's Derek Lanois. Derek Lanois picked up another goal. He has had a solid season too. You know, you talk to Coach Bouchard about Lanois, and this is exactly what he says. Quote, he has really stepped in over the last year. You know, what we're seeing from him is good things. Happy to see that he's playing well. Green Wave ends up picking up a nice victory. I got to tell you, they have a primetime game that is coming up this weekend against East Hampton High School, 6:30. It's a game that you don't want to miss, folks. Get over to the Collins Mullen Arena and root on the Green Wave. Well, there you go, folks. That's going to wrap things up for me, Bobby C., and the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. First show of 2020. And let's say a big thank you, Philippe Simone, John Meisner, the Four Leaf Clover Restaurant, Denny's Pantry, Lisa Alber of Alber Hearing Services. Also, Chris Collins in the FCAT, where you can tune in down there. You could tune in Turner's Falls area, Montague Community Television with Deidre and Dean. Also, Berniston and Northfield, Otis Wheeler and the fine staff up there. We got you on here, folks. Your sports are right here. The Franklin County Varsity Sports Report. Get out and support your local athletes. Happy New Year.
Thanks for watching the Franklin County Varsity Sports Report on GCTV. Catch a game and be sure to join us next time for more sports and fun. Thanks for watching.